I'm such a fan. I'm
oh my God,
so happy to be sitting down with you.
Me too.
And especially with this book, it covers so much of your life. Tell me why it was time.
This year is 20 years since I started in the music industry. I put out my first single at 13. And with that big milestone coming up, I wanted to start to like make sense of what the hell has been happening in my life. Like, so I spent so much time being so confused and struggling with depression and anxiety and just really feeling so lost and alone for a lot of my life, mostly in my teens and 20s. And I wanted to start putting it on paper and seeing if, first of all, I could understand myself and my life a little bit more, and if there might be things that I could share with other people, particularly younger people who might be interested in the music industry or want to get involved and not deal with some of the things that I dealt with professionally and personally.
There's so many relatable themes in this book as you talk about anxiety, depression, addiction, but also at the core of it is your music and your journey. Let's go back to the beginning. Were you that little girl that just was singing right out of the womb? How did you realize you actually could sing?
I never knew. I have no memories that don't have me feeling like I was a singer. From the moment I was born, my mom said pretty much when I was making sound, it was kind of melodic. So I was very much that annoying kid, still am that annoying kid, that singing, walking down the street. I was singing, going from classroom to classroom, and that really annoyed a lot of kids. And that made me like an easy target for bullying because I was an eccentric little girl. And I just liked, it was a way to express myself. It made me feel comfort. It made me feel connected. And I've always loved it.
Don't you wish that little girl knew that all those things that people were picking on her were going to be her superpowers?
Totally.
I always think about that for myself too. Just like, I just wish that that little girl knew that people are picking on you because it's powerful.
Yes, and it can be, I mean, that's the perfect way to put it. It's powerful, and kids are mean.
Kids are so mean.
Kids are just jerks, yeah.
So you have a crazy journey, but you also have a lot of chance encounters. Beginning with Britney Spears.
Let's start there.
Let's start there because that was one of my favorite parts of the books because I'm such a Britney fan.
A fellow Sagittarius.
Fellow Sagittarius.
Like us,
That was like a moment in the book where I was like, wow, I get it. Brit's a Sagittarius. So you go to a concert and you're singing and you find your way backstage in front of Britney Spears.
Yeah, I was like 9 years old. It was my first big concert that I had ever been to. It was the pop station in Boston, Kiss 108. And sang my way backstage through security. My mom was just like on the ride with me pretty much. I was like the captain of the ship and she was my co-pilot. I don't know why she let me do these weird things, but she was just like, all right, Joanna. And yeah, so I got to meet Britney Spears. I sang for her security guard, and then they were like, you should meet Britney. And then eventually she was like, you know, I'm about to start a production company. Like, maybe we should exchange information. And then a few months later, that was the first contract that I was offered. And that was, I maybe was 10 or 9 or 10. And my mom was like, you're too young, Joanna. And I was like, you're trying to ruin my life. This is Britney Spears. She's the coolest, biggest star in the world. And her star was just starting to rise, but she was huge. And so, yeah, that was the first chance encounter like that.
Do you think about what would have happened if you did sign with Britney?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't. I mean, the path would have been so different.
Yeah.
I think that if it weren't for exactly the label that I was signed to, the people that I worked with, I would not have the career that I have. Yeah. I would not have had the big mainstream success that I had as a teenager. I think that everything happened perfectly like it was supposed to. I don't think my music would have even come out on Britney Spears' label because she never ended up putting out other artists. Right. You know what I mean? So why would I think that? I think things happen the way they're supposed to.
Yeah. Early on, you also go on America's Most Talented Kids with our host, Mario Lopez.
Oh, hey, Mario. Yes.
So what do you remember?
He hosts everything, yo. He has hosted everything, and he still looks the same, too. It's unbelievable. What are you doing?
He will be very happy to hear you say
He,
that.
he knows he looks great.
So what do you remember about that experience?
I remember feeling like, oh, I got this in the bag. I'm like, I'm a talented kid. I got this. But the thing about that is that it's talented kids coming from all over America.
Yeah.
So you're a big fish in your small town, but you are a small fish when it's all these other talented kids. So it was really humbling for my inflated young ego. It was very humbling because I think I lost to a violinist who was extraordinary. And so I was like, okay, my life is over, my career is over. I had so many moments like this throughout my young life and throughout my, young adult life where I was like, this is the end.
Yeah.
I can't recover from this. So at 11 or 12, I was like, there's no recovering. And then right after that is when I met somebody who introduced me to my future executive producer and the label that I would eventually sign to. And just like that, my life changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your debut album, as you said, it's been 20 years, which is insane because I'm the exact same age as you, as we said.
So to do anything for 20 years is wild.
Wild. We're still fairly young.
Yeah. I mean.
Yes. That album was so good. There is not a millennial woman that does not hear that album and just like immediately takes me back to sitting in my room, like listening, singing about God knows what boy.
There were no boys in my life at that point, so I don't know what we were doing.
I mean, I think same, but in my head.
Yeah, I had crushes. I was so boy crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to sing a song like Leave, Get Out, for example, which was my first single, and to have people be like, what do you know about that? And the truth was I knew nothing about kicking someone out of my life, But I was channeling something else.
You just had it.
I guess I just was, yeah.
So that song, I want to dig into that a little bit. It was obviously a banger. It hits the charts. You are the youngest solo artist ever to chart in that category. Insane. What is going through your mind?
So I think I was overseas opening for Usher. That was my first tour. So I was overseas when Leave, Get Out went #1. And I didn't understand what it meant necessarily. I mean, who doesn't want that? But to have that as your first single at 13, go #1, and then you're being told you're the youngest solo artist to have that. I just didn't really know how to internalize or how to reconcile any of it.
Right.
But I mean, it was so exciting.
Yeah,
it was like everything.
Yeah.
And my mom and I just ordered a pizza and we just ate the whole pizza in the hotel room. And then I just went about, the rest of my obligations, and I was excited. And I think it was a big fear of mine being a one-hit wonder. And so when Too Little Too Late came and had a massive success, I was like, thank God, at least people can't say that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I was like, how do you top that? I was really scared about that. Yeah. And but yeah, I just kind of went about the rest of everything.
And your fear was not, it did not happen because the overall album was a huge success.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not That Kind of Girl.
Yeah, Baby It's You.
I mean, there were a lot of really incredible songs on that.
Thanks.
It's really like such a good one.
I'm really grateful for the people that came together to shape that album, because the truth is, I didn't know what I was doing at 12 years old when I recorded these songs.
Right.
So the image and the sound, the persona that was developed around me, I think they did a really good job. Like in retrospect, I wouldn't have been able to guide or shape that. I needed guidance.
Right.
So, is it a bit grown? Is it pushing the boundaries? Absolutely. But what's happening today with boundaries being pushed, it pales in comparison.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I think it was like age appropriate but edgy.
Yeah. You talk about like yelling the words and how someone came up with that idea on site, and you kind of were like, okay, because your mom told you not to yell because it would hurt your vocals.
My mom is the biggest believer in, living like a singer and not raising your voice, not speaking over loud music, just doing all the things that like a Celine Dion would do, for example, the vocal rest, all those things. So she was like, Joanna, you're not supposed to yell. And so here's this Scandinavian producer being like, scream at the top of your lungs, leave, no, loser, why? And I was like, oh, I'm being a bad girl. So it was exciting. I got to get away with something bad.
And the Y2K music video.
Yes.
The attitude you were serving in that video.
I was having so much fun. And all the kids were so much older than me. You know, they were probably over 18, but they were like meant to look like high schools. It was my first time in a high school.
Yeah.
Because I was still in middle school. But that was a moment I'll never forget. And yeah, I was definitely channeling some type of angsty older person.
Absolutely. You talk a lot about your relationship with your mom. It's a theme throughout the book.
Yeah.
Obviously, she's with you from the beginning of your career throughout your whole journey. What was it like for you sharing that relationship, getting really vulnerable about that relationship?
That was the relationship that I wanted to treat the most tenderly, but also that I really wanted to share with my fans or with anybody who picks up this book. Because the mother-daughter relationship is a tough one, and it can be beautiful, and it can be everything. And I feel like I had protected her, and she had protected me, you know, as my mother in a lot of ways. But I felt like the roles had been reversed for a while. Like I became the parent, especially when you're dealing with parents like both of mine who identify as addicts. My father passed away from that, and my mom has now been sober for a long time. So I wanted to talk about redemption in this book, my own journey with it, and in believing that people can change. I believed that my dad could change up until his passing, and my mom has been an example of changing and of taking control of her mental health, her emotional health, her sobriety. But there were some really, really dark, rough times that particularly I wanted to share with my fans, but I never wanted to disrespect my mom. And I'm grateful that she was willing to let me talk about these things because of her growth.
Yeah.
And because she's not in that place anymore. But it was a lot of weight on me to try to keep going in my career, to provide for us, essentially, and to never know if she was gonna, you know, because my mom struggled with suicidal ideations and depression and anxiety, and it hurt me really deeply, and I thought it was my fault, and I thought that I was responsible for keeping her alive. And what I realize now is that that's not true, and that that's not fair to have a child feel that way. And I just have compassion for what I was going through and also what she was going through. Yeah. Because then I went through my own ups and downs with depression and anxiety. And so I wanted to talk about these things, and I'm just grateful that I didn't hurt her in the process of doing that. I wanted to paint her as a whole human being, not just somebody who makes mistakes, because I would hate if somebody did that to me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I just have so many questions on this topic because I think it's such a relatable thing to go through, to feel for a child to take on the role of a parent.
Yeah.
And I think so many people are going to see themselves in that. Did your mom read the book?
She did.
Okay.
I wanted her to like be a part. I got to ask her some questions about what she remembered, because I can't remember everything myself. So she did help spark some things, and then she said she didn't want to read it because thought it might upset her, but then she decided she did.
Yeah.
So she read it, she loves it, she's proud of it, because I think she's proud of her own journey too.
Yeah. Yes.
And her story, our story, is in this book. It's not just mine.
Yes.
So yeah, she has read it.
I always think of this quote. It's one of my favorites. What punishments of gods are not gifts?
Woo!
Isn't it good?
That's good.
I know. Stephen Colbert said it in an interview with Anderson Cooper. But it sounds like what you're talking about is similar to, akin to that message of, you've been through a lot. Your mom has been through a lot. But it feels like it's been really what's made you who you are now, the foundation of who you are.
It is the foundation of who I am. I mean, definitely. And she did a great job. I was so harshly judgmental of her for so long. most of my 20s.
We do that.
Yeah, I was really angry and resentful, and I wanted to make her into something different than she was. I felt like I had been given the short end of the stick in some ways with both my parents. And now I'm able to appreciate how amazing she is and how scary it would be to come from the very humble beginnings that we come from, to be thrown into this situation that she was thrown into with a child who was like, I want to be a star and I want to do all these things. And she just wanted to protect me.
Yeah.
But she had no information or education about the music industry. And she also had her own demons that she was struggling with. So the fact that she's still here, the fact that we have a good relationship, and the fact that she's a beautiful person, I'm really impressed by that. A lot of people wouldn't have been able to deal with what she dealt with.
Yeah. You're super open about your own addiction, your own anxiety, your own depression in the book. You even called addiction the foundation that everything else was built upon.
And that's, I think, because my parents met in AA. I'm the product, they call it the 13th step, if you like get with somebody in the program. And for anybody who's part of AA and watching, I do feel guilty about, disclosing their anonymity, but she said it was okay for me to talk about. And so I'm not in the program, but I grew up in the program. So that's why it's a foundation, because my parents were always talking about that they were powerless to their addiction. And then I was like, I'm never going to be like that. I'm not powerless. I'm powerful. And I think, and before my dad passed, he was like, don't throw stones in a glass house. You have it in you. It's like, addiction is like Arnold Schwarzenegger pumping iron in your backyard waiting for you. Just when I was like, don't speak that over my life. That's terrible.
Wow.
But what I realized is that addiction for me isn't one thing. It's not a substance. It's a void that exists that I've tried to fill in many different ways. Relationships, substances, validation, fame, social media, sex. It could be any different thing. Food. I have a whole tools I could pull at different times and be like, oh yeah, this will make me feel better.
Yeah.
So it's that I identify with, and I just don't think that I'm above it now. So I really try to check myself before I think that, oh no, I'm just, I couldn't fall victim to these things. I have a lot of reverence for that.
Absolutely. Do you think before you started, any kind of substances, whether it be alcohol or trying a drug or anything, do you think that you battled with, oh, I'm not going to become like them, I'm different?
Yes. Yeah. I wasn't even that I battled with it. I was very self-righteous about it. I was like, I'm not like them. I'm never going to be like them because they're weak. That's the truth. I'm just being really honest, that I think that I was a bit of a dickhead about it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand. And sometimes I can be really hard-shelled as opposed to, and I push through. But when I really sat with it and thought about it, particularly around losing my father, which was about 9 years ago, I think, I really started to look at it in a different way. And, but yeah, I think a lot of kids who come from homes where their parents are addicted, they either go toward it or against, the other way. And when I started experimenting with different substances and stuff like that, somehow I was like, oh, well, it's not as bad as that, or it's not as bad as this. But at a certain point, I was like, no, this is just as bad.
Yeah.
This is actually just as bad.
Yeah. It got pretty bad at certain times.
Yeah.
You had a very scary moments, and we can only thank God that you're okay and that you got through it. You say in the book, I should be dead.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I was living my life at a certain point. I was so reckless. And I wasn't considering the safety of others, the safety of myself. I was getting super drunk and high and getting behind the wheel, and I was not around people who would say, what the are you doing? So it was not my finest hour. It's only by the grace of God that I didn't hurt myself or someone else.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens when you get behind the wheel. Things can go terribly bad.
So you're getting close to what seems like your rock bottom. You're maybe ready for a change. So when does that hit?
I really skirted along the edge for a long time.
Yeah.
And
You find yoga.
I find yoga. That is a big part of a shift for me.
Yeah.
Because I lived so much in my head. And that's, I think, what substances tried to get me out of. I was trying to get out of my head. And so developing a different relationship with my body that wasn't about achieving a certain result or a certain size or a certain number on the scale, which had been kind of impressed upon me that it was important to be to look a certain way from a young age.
Yes.
So finding yoga and having like a pleasurable relationship with my body where I was like, oh, wow, like this feels so good. It's kind of euphoric. It's kind of like natural drugs that don't harm me or anyone else.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a shift. And also I wasn't happy in the way that my relationships were shaking out. I wasn't fulfilled in my career. I wasn't fulfilled in romantic relationships and my family. Everything was just not good.
Yeah.
My professional, I was like, and I had read enough self-help books to be like, this is probably me.
Yeah.
It's probably not anyone else. I'm the common denominator here. So I had to, and thankfully I have, people in my life who are sober or who are spiritually minded, and they helped to kind of guide me a little bit.
Yeah. You talk a lot about body image, as you said. Listen, you're in the spotlight in the late 90s, early 2000s. Not a kind time for anyone in this industry, especially women.
Right.
So it's no surprise that people are making inappropriate comments to you about your body, saying things they should not be saying, and you react. You cut calories down to 500 calories a day.
But, and there's no but, it's and. And so many women in the music industry did this, and probably still do. You know, we like to look a certain way. And the unfortunate reality that people don't talk about because it's just not cute, it's not the vibe, is that people do extreme things.
Yeah.
And so my label actually at the time put me with a nutritionist because they thought they were doing the right thing for my career. They were like, you need to look a certain way to sell this music. And I was like, you know what? I don't want anybody to think that I'm not a hard worker, that I don't take my career seriously. So in that spirit, I was like, I'm down. Let's do it. I'll keep the chopped strawberries in my purse. I'll bring my own spray salad dressing.
Right.
If I need to go out, I'll get the 5 ounces of chicken. Like I was, doing the things.
Right.
And the unfortunate thing is that was par for the course, particularly back then.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but I hope that people reading this take note and
know that it's not just like genetics that play into it. Like I'm not thinking about for myself, but like because I was like so frustrated looking at these women that I'm like, oh my God, how do they look like this?
Yeah.
And no one really talked about the truth of it.
Yeah.
They weren't eating.
They weren't eating.
Yeah. So, and I refuse to do that today. I just can't.
Yeah.
So.
What do you think people don't understand about how the music industry works and how those masters are not always, well, almost never owned by you?
Well, something that I think people don't think about or account for with the music industry is the politics within it. Within any system, there is that, but the musical chairs that's happening behind the scenes. So for example, you get signed to a label and you have an A&R person that's there, that's your designated chair, your champion in the building pretty much. But oftentimes those A&Rs are getting poached by another label. So they might leave. So then you no longer have a champion in the building. So then you're kind of left floating in the wind, and that's how artists get shelved, or that's how artists get the direction shifts, because then there's other people that are like, no, it should be this. We disagreed with what the A&R was doing. So there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen a lot of times. in my case, there were a lot of people that had a lot of different opinions, and that was very confusing for a young, impressionable, squishy mind like mine. And there's also just nobody knows what they're doing, particularly now. The label systems are crashing. It's a new regime is forming. It's the Wild West in the music industry.
Yeah.
We're seeing times now where artists are saying, why do I actually need this intermediary thing when I have a direct relationship with my fans? Why am I profit sharing with a company that isn't really giving, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So there are different ways that an artist can make money. There's publishing, songwriting, which comes from songwriting. There's the master royalties. There's mechanical royalties from streaming. There's different avenues. And that's something that's a big thing, is the conversation about who owns the masters. So most of the time in a major label deal, they'll own at least the majority of the masters, or 50-50. And there's thankfully, I believe it's moving in a direction where even if you are still a part of the major label system and you're playing that game, that you can eventually one day retain your masters again.
Right.
But it's just weird because my first label owned my voice. This was par for the course back then. Owned my voice. I couldn't do anything recorded that made me money without their approval. So it's just weird thinking about your own intellectual property and relinquishing the control of that.
Taylor Swift obviously, famously, is re-recording all of her masters.
Yeah.
You did something similar. You've re-recorded a lot of your music.
I did. I did that a couple years before she did. So that was a scary thing to do because there wasn't really a precedent for it. I was like, will my fans receive this? Because it was for them. And it was for me to reclaim my legacy that I had been building since I was 12 years old. Because my music wasn't available on streaming services. The label didn't do a deal with the DSPs, the digital streaming platforms, and every label needed to do that. And they were dragging their feet. So me and Aaliyah, who passed in, I think, 2002 or 3, none of her music was available on streaming. And I just thought it was awful. So I was like, if I can do something about this, let me try to do something about this. So I re-recorded my first 2 albums and a couple singles that were outside of that as well, and put them on streaming platforms under my own imprint, Clover Music. And that was just a part of me feeling empowered as opposed to like a victim of circumstances that I had nothing to do with, and that was so confusing, and where fans were like, why isn't your music available? Like, are you embarrassed by your first 2 albums? I'm like, no, that's a part of my life, and I like seeing the money that can come from that. And I also believe that the people that made the music should be compensated for it, the collaborators. And so it was just a weird time, and I wanted to do something about it. So I'm really happy to see artists, particularly someone as powerful and just ubiquitous as Taylor Swift, shifting the narrative and being empowered to say, this is my property, this is my creation, and this is my legacy.
Totally. You mentioned Taylor and Selena in the book. You have a couple pages about them, which made me so happy because, as fans, we want to know that the girls are girling.
The girls are girling. Right, the intersection of it all, that was a moment.
You meet Selena. She, you guys become fast friends, and she invites you to Taylor's. How did those 2 women really just immediately have your back and offer you support?
That was actually kind of I couldn't believe it moment. It was kind of surreal because I have so much respect and admiration for Taylor. And Selena is so sweet and so talented. And so we met through a mutual friend, Francia, and then she was like, we're having a Galentine's at Taylor's. I'm like, at Taylor Swift's? And she's like, do you want to come? I'm like, yeah, I'm single as let's go. And she just had the sweetest gathering, and so I talk about that in the book, and the support that I felt at the time, and the just the normalcy of it, of just girls girling and talking about whatever boys we were talking to at the time, and eating In and Out, and being, in sweats, and
So
it was really nice.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful moment.
I would love to see you record with either of them.
I mean, I would too.
Yeah.
Never say never.
It's true.
I'm a fan.
So Moulin Rouge, I'm obsessed. I've seen it.
I'm obsessed too. I love the show. I think it's so fun.
I love the show. Your role, Satine. It's such a iconic role on Broadway. What made you want to take on this role?
So I've been a musical theater girly since I was a little kid. My first thing I ever did was I played Tommy in The Who's Tommy in a local production in Massachusetts, and had a little wig on me. And then I did A Midsummer Night's Dream. And so I love musical theater so much. And I saw the touring production of Moulin Rouge in LA at the Pantages. And when Satine came down from the ceiling, I was like, woo, I would love to come down from the ceiling one day. I was thinking, how could I incorporate this into the tour with the budget I don't have? How could I do that?
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put it out there into the universe that I'd like to do theater. I didn't feel ready at the time to make new music. I really wanted to step away from the industry for a moment, but I still was so interested in entertainment as a whole. I told my agent that I wanted to see if there was any opportunities out there, and they happened to come back and say, actually, Moulin Rouge is looking for someone. Are you interested in auditioning? I auditioned, went through that whole process, and went in over-prepared. I knew every song. I was just excited. I felt like a little kid again.
Yeah.
And I hadn't been that excited in a long time. Yeah. I really was interested in being a part of an entire production, a community, a company, and growing and learning. Like if I don't feel like I can expand or grow or be of service or be useful in something, then I don't really, at this point, it doesn't interest me. But I have been growing, I think, in this role. And even just the role of being a leading lady on Broadway and having such amazing people around me. And every person is equally important. And I really appreciate that, a part of the experience.
Broadway is no joke. We were talking about that off camera.
Yeah.
After reading your book, knowing everything you've been through, what is your daily practice life like? Just to feel in the right mindset, being physically happy, emotionally happy and healthy. How do you stay on track?
I definitely do have a physical practice, whether it's yoga or Pilates or going to the gym and doing some interval stuff. I like to sweat and like feel connected to my body before I go on stage and like come down from the ceiling and get lifted and have 12 costume changes and all that. So I like to do something that feels harder before. And I don't drink alcohol while I'm performing, while I'm in this season of it. And I follow an anti-inflammatory diet. I steam at night. I go on vocal shutdown when I can. When I come home, it's just me and Love Island and Agape, and we're just chilling. And so I don't really have much of a social life right now. Not that there's a season for everything. So not that I won't, but I'm just dedicated right now.
Yeah.
And so that's part of my practice. But for a few weeks, I was actually doing double duty where I was performing at Moulin Rouge 7 times a week and also workshopping a new musical. And that happens a lot where things are in development and you come in from the ground up. And that was kind of like an initiation almost into this life in this community. And I'm so glad that I made it through that, because you're workshopping and singing from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., then running from the rehearsal to the theater to do another show, put on a different accent. But it makes me feel like a kid again.
Yeah.
And that's really, I'm grateful for that feeling.
You talked about, before coming to New York, ending your engagement.
Yeah.
Do you feel, had that not happened, you might not be here?
I do feel that everything happens perfectly, even if it sucks at the time, and even if it's like, whoa, why did this shake out this way? But I do believe that. I think that it opened a space for me to say yes to something that really interested me. Not that I wouldn't have said yes to moving to New York and everything, but now I'm fully a New York girly.
Yeah, I love that.
And I'm grateful for this season. I always dreamed of living in New York and having this season. And I think that it just, as much as I wasn't planning on being single right now, I'd rather be single than get a divorce.
100%.
So there's that.
Do you still believe in love? Do you believe in the
yes.
one? Okay.
I believe that there's multiple ones. Not that there's like, it could be you or you or you. I just mean that there's so many wonderful people in the world.
Yeah.
And I've been blessed to have wonderful relationships with great men. And I have not been ready, and they have not been, and the situations have not been right, but I've been fortunate before. God willing, I'll be fortunate again, and it'll be in perfect alignment, and it'll work out. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to calling in love into my life and to making space for it. And I'm just not like actively seeking.
That's the best place to be.
I mean, I'm
I
like
think.
swiping on one app, but I'm just not like eager to go out.
Okay,
right
I
now.
think that's the best place to
I'm just
be.
like, it's like a game.
It is like
Just
a game.
looking. Yeah, it's the best place to be, though. I agree.
I was literally just texting my friend who's on the dating apps right now and like talking her through, because it is. I literally said to her, I'm like, it's like a game. It can mess with you, but you got to keep a good mindset and believe in divine timing.
And I am all about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything we didn't talk about in the book that you want people to know?
I'm excited for the conversations that I hope will be sparked from my fans and my community reading this book, and also people outside of it. I hope that people who don't know who I am, don't care about me, read this as well as a story about redemption and about pivoting and about, you think your life is over or you think this is the worst thing in the world. It's not over until you give up. Somebody said that to me. Actually, Cyndi Lauper recently said that to me, where she's 71 years old and she's about to go on this world tour and she looks unbelievable. And I'm so inspired by her and her energy. And I said, what advice would you give somebody for longevity in this game? And she goes, never stop. Just keep going. Just keep going. And she made it so simple. And I'm like, that's it.
Just keep
Just
going.
keep going.
Just
So
keep swimming.
That's what just keep swimming.
That's my favorite. We didn't talk about Aquamarine. Wait, your line on that beach, the way you deliver, because it's the closest thing we have to magic.
Oh my God.
I think that's the exact line.
I think you're right.
I think so.
I can't tell you how many people come up to me after a show at Moulin Rouge and they want me to sign their DVD for Aquamarine, or they quote something from the movie. I'm like, I had no idea. I literally haven't watched it since it came out because I'm like a little embarrassed by it. But I love that people love it. It's funny when people refer to me as the girl from Aquamarine. I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm her. I guess that's me. That's so funny. But it makes me happy that it was a part of people's like childhoods, and
totally.
it's this moment.
It is a moment in time.
Sweet.
It's a pop culture moment. I think we need
sweet.
Aquamarine too.
Think so?
I'm ready for it.
Okay, I'm diving in.
She's diving.
You never know.